Hello, and welcome to our discussion of the third issue in Frank Miller's Batman, Hunt the Dark Knight. Now, there's a lot going on in this issue, but the main conflict is the confrontation between Batman and the Joker. You'll remember that the Joker killed Jason Todd, which is what led Bruce Wayne to give up being Batman for a decade. The Joker gave up being a criminal, too, during this time, until he saw that his darling Batman had made a comeback. Homoeroticism isn't anything new in the world of heroes. We know that in some versions of the Greek myths, Achilles and Patroclus were actually lovers. In real life, Batman was accused of homosexuality with his sidekick Robin in 1954 when American psychiatrist Frederick Wertham published his book Seduction of the Innocent, which argued that comic books were a terrible influence on children and rotting their brains. He's the reason we have the cheesy, super clean versions of superheroes in the 1960s. In many ways, Dark Knight Returns seems to parody Wertham's accusations. We have a pair of goofball psychiatrists making similar arguments, but we also have a very gritty, macho Batman who thoroughly negates the effeminate gay stereotypes of the time. And then we have the Joker, whose depiction is most definitely queered here. Now, these days, the word queer is used as sort of an umbrella term for anyone or anything that is not strictly heterosexual or cisgender. So I'm not trying to say that the Joker is gay for Batman. I don't think that's where this text is going at all. But he is definitely queered, and I'd like to put forth the interpretation that the relationship between Batman and the Joker is actually a kind of twisted inversion of the traditional marriage. Instead of going out for date nights, they go out and meet in the street for bloody street fights. Instead of bringing a child into the world, the Joker cruelly murders one. Let's start with a few of the obvious things. The Joker repeatedly refers to Batman as darling, and his darling Batman's return is what breaks him out of his catatonic state. There's also Bruno, a very odd character. You may have missed it, but she worked for the Joker back in the day, and it's implied that she and the Joker were an item. Harley Quinn had not been invented as a character yet. It's also implied that she is a trans woman. Her name is Bruno, she's drawn very masculine, and the liquor store shopkeep has some choice words about her body work. Perhaps Frank Miller is trying to give us a clue about the Joker's sexual predilections? He is also particular about his makeup. Specifically, he picks out a bright red mind control lipstick for his late-night television appearance. The Joker's first act of violence happens right after a conversation between Dr. Wolper and Dr. Weisenheimer. Weisenheimer says, "People should have sex und sex und sex all the time." And Dr. Wolper says Batman's psychosis is the result of sexual repression. The Joker declares that we must not restrain ourselves, and kisses Weisenheimer, and begins his massacre, as if the violence of mass death is somehow connected to his own sexual satisfaction. The Joker also goes to Selina Kyle, the former Catwoman, Batman's lover. Of all the escort services to use in Gotham, he made sure to go to hers. And then there's the final showdown. Batman chases the Joker through a carnival, perfect setting chosen by the clown, each one earnestly trying to kill the other one. Batman finally has his chance to kill the Joker once and for all in the Tunnel of Love. To get revenge for Jason, to avenge the people the Joker had just killed at the carnival. And Batman can't do it. He can't cross that line and break his rule. The Joker expresses disappointment that his darling couldn't perform. And then, just to show you how insane the Joker is, he kills himself by twisting his own neck, and not with his hands, laughing as he dies. In a way, he kind of spares Batman from having to kill him. If there's one person Batman wanted to kill wholeheartedly, it was the Joker. And he didn't. He remains firmly on the right side of that line. If it wasn't for the Joker's really creepy suicide, it would have been a real anticlimactic fight. And so far in the story, it looked like Batman was getting more and more violent, pushing that envelope more and more. But he proves himself here that he does indeed have a limit, a stopping point, a moral compass. Even if that moral compass isn't in line with the law. Yindel pursues her arrest of Batman in this issue. He only barely gets away. And, of course, Batman is the hero, or anti-hero, of this comic. But Yindel seems pretty heroic in her own way. And I personally think she's kind of badass. I mean, she's on the side of law and order. She's a good guy. Even if she's not the hero of this book, I would definitely classify her as a hero. Like, yeah, if I saw a big guy like that lugging around a 13-year-old girl when he's getting shot at, I would press child endangerment charges against him too. But that means we have two heroes on two opposing sides. Sound familiar? The Batman-Yindel conflict is like a smaller, parallel version of the conflict between Batman and Superman. Superman enters the story much in the same way Batman entered. Just as the comic showed us scenes of Batman defeating criminals before we actually got to see the Batman, we also see several scenes of Superman rushing by people, helping and rescuing people, before we get to see him in all his glory, but not until many pages later. At this point in the story, politics becomes increasingly important. We see the Cold War stumble onto the pages. Apparently, the US and the Soviet Union are fighting another proxy war in the fictional Corto Maltese. And we finally get to see the President of the United States. He seems to be a kind of caricature of Ronald Reagan. He's always changing what he says mid-sentence, like we're not supposed to trust him. And indeed, when he's asked about Batman, he passes off comment to the governor, mayor, and finally Yindel. No one in the government seems to be doing a great job in this comic. But Batman and Superman also have a stake in the politics of the story. Batman busies himself with what Superman calls his personal little holy war in Gotham. Meanwhile, we see Superman rush off to fight in an actual war in Corto Maltese. If you were to pick sides right now between Superman and Batman, who would you choose as the better hero? Batman's fighting for a single city, but Superman is involved in international conflicts. He's saving the world. Doesn't Superman get the automatic win for that? Okay, but to be fair, Batman doesn't have any superpowers. It's a lot easier to fight an international war, without killing people no less, if you have the super strength to lift tanks above your head, super speed so fast that you're invisible, laser eyes and ears that can hear heartbeats. But superpowers, or lack thereof, isn't the only reason why Batman's fight is in Gotham and Superman's fight is international. Batman and Superman have starkly different political opinions about how superheroes are supposed to act. During the scenes of Superman's fight in Corto Maltese, his inner monologue gives us some clues as to what the superheroes' lives were like before The Dark Knight Returns. Superman recalls Batman saying to a group of politicians, "Sure, we're criminals. We've always been criminals. We have to be criminals." Oof. Okay. I mean, Batman is technically a criminal because he's a vigilante. He's technically doing police work without the proper police license and certifications. Also, he beats up people pretty bad. But is it true what he's saying? All superheroes are necessarily criminals? Captain America, Spider-Man, Superman? Why do they have to be criminals? Is Batman saying he just straight up doesn't trust the government? Which then begs the larger question, what is the relationship between heroes and law? Laws can be unjust. We saw that in Antigone. But is he suggesting that heroes and the law are actually diametrically opposed? Let's take a look at Superman's side of things. He says, "Nothing matters to you, Bruce, except your holy war. I gave them my obedience and my invisibility. They gave me a license and let us live. No, I don't like it, but I get to save lives, and the media stays quiet. But now the storm is coming again. They'll hunt us down again, because of you." So it sounds like there was some kind of political push to legislate superheroes before the start of this story. Superheroes that did not comply with these new laws were hunted down. Batman retired. Superman got a government license, and now, as we saw last issue, he takes orders from the president. He's become a secret government weapon of sorts. The news anchors can't even talk about him directly on the air, and when he goes to Corto Maltese, there's a media blackout. So Superman has given up some of his personal freedoms and choice to compromise with the government. He won't act on his own, and the government will tell him where he's needed most. Although I'm sure he's only going out to save American lives, nobody's giving the order to save the Russians. Superman's life is quiet, peaceful, except for the superheroing he does, because he's made peace with the government. Batman's life, well, he certainly made an impression on the citizens of Gotham through news coverage of him. It's a media frenzy, and it's that way precisely because he goes against the government. The government is supposed to take care of us, and laws are supposed to protect us. But if the government is corrupt or a law is unjust, how do you handle it? Do you follow Batman's example? Work according to your own beliefs. Damned be what the government thinks. Or do you follow Superman's example? Compromise with the government. Meet in the middle. There are theories out there that Batman actually represents the left side of the political spectrum, and Superman actually represents the right side of politics. That's not my personal interpretation, but I do think it's a fascinating way to look at and try to interpret the conflict between these two characters. And we'll see exactly how it plays out on Thursday. We'll also check in with the Sons of Batman. We've seen through a few snippets of news coverage that they're no longer slicing and dicing innocent civilians. They're only taking on criminals now, which would be good, except they are way overdoing it. Cutting off someone's hands for stealing a candy bar? Killing not only a drug dealer, but an addict too? Did the switch from mutants to Sons of Batman really change anything about them at all? We will find out next time in the final issue, issue number 4, The Dark Knight Falls. For discussion boards this time, we're going to do something a little bit different. Please make sure to read the instructions on Canvas, as always, so you get a full idea of what my expectations are. I'd like for you to do a close reading of a scene from any of the 3 books we've read so far, issues 1 through 3. Pick a scene that's 1 to 2 pages in length, no more than this. Analyze 1 to 3 details of the scene and write up a conclusion telling me why this scene is important to the rest of the book as a whole. Now, since the comic book doesn't have page numbers, do make sure to identify which book or issue it's from and give us some context about what's going on in the scene so we know where to look. That's for your attendance. For your participation points, you can respond to other people's close readings. There are a number of different things that you can talk about. You can ask questions about their close reading, offer in a different interpretation, a different reading of that scene. Maybe there's another detail in the scene that they didn't talk about that you can talk about. Or you can make connections from their scene to your scene or other scenes in the book to help talk about why this scene is important to the story. As always, for those responses, you can get up to 3 participation points per day. That brings us to the end of this lecture. Stay well, and I'll see you next time.